So the first step here is we're going to create some logo types. And so what logo types are is when we take two letters and combine them together to create a shape. And so I'm going to walk you through how to do the first three of these. So the keys to this is that both letters have to be a different font, and they need to fit with the assigned category of logo type that we're giving you. And that they also, both letters need to touch, and that you need to use your initials. And so I'm going to show you an example where I'm using my initials, but just to start out to show you a blank sheet here, what I have here is the step one template. And if you haven't already downloaded this, you need to, and open it up, and it'll create an untitled document, which you should go in and save and your T drive folder. And so if you remember, you should have your last name, first initial, your semester, which is spring 2015, your hour, which is second hour in this case, and then the assignment. And so this is type as design. And if you want to abbreviate it, TAD, and this is step one, you're going to have three different steps. So you want to keep all of those separate. So then you go ahead and save this and click OK in that next box. Okay, so now you have this saved and we have this open. You can come down here and change your name so that if when you print this out you don't have a chance to get it matted immediately, then it's not getting lost in the classroom. And believe it or not, a lot of people have the same initials. So to get started on this, I want to show you a few samples that I've made already. And so let's just kind of explore what the template has on it already. And so I'm going to zoom in, and if you remember, you hold down on Alt and use your scroll wheel to zoom in, and then hold down on the space bar to drag your sheet around. And so what I've done here is the assigned combination that needs to go in this first template box is your thick, thick combination. And so what I did is I paired together my first initial L and my last initial F, and I found two thick fonts. And so how do you go about doing this? So I'm going to flip back really quick and zoom in and drag over. And you're going to want to zoom in so you can see the details of what you're creating. So we're going to choose our text tool, and we're going to make a fairly large text box. When we type in our L, we can make it larger by clicking back on that box. And if you hold down Command and Shift and then use the greater than sign, it'll increase the size of your font. Another way of doing that, of course, is to come over here. I'll warn you that the largest size that is preset is 72, and that's usually not big enough for this assignment. And so I would start out at 100, and depending on the font you're using, you may end up doing 150. This is one reason why I point out that using the Command Shift greater than sign comes in handy. Okay, so we've got our L typed in. We're going to go ahead and type in a separate text box your F. Because we're going to want to move these around, it's a good idea to have two separate text boxes. So, as I said earlier, we want to make sure that these are in different fonts. And so, before we get started with making them different fonts though, I think it's just easiest working efficiently, trying to save some time. We have our L and our F created. We're just going to change fonts and sizes from here on out. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hold down on Alt, select my L and F, hold down on Alt again, select my L and F, and we'll leave those alone for right now. And we're just going to go back and zoom in on our first thick, thick combination one. And so we want both of these to be thick fonts. And so in order to see a good preview, if you just click up here, it doesn't show you what the font looks like. And so what we're going to do instead is go to Character, and from this drop-down menu, it's easier to see which fonts are large and which aren't. And so I think what I did is I chose Phosphate Solid a while ago. And so I ended up with this nice big L. And then for the F, I went in and looked for one. And I hope you guys take more time in looking for this. Remember that I spent some time doing this before I started recording the video. But I chose Mesquite, it's one of those Western type fonts, if you remember our font competition this last week. And notice what happened here. I had the letter highlighted, I changed the character, and where did my character go? Well, if you look right here, there is a red plus symbol, and what that means is that there is something there that I can't see because the text box isn't big enough. And so if I click and drag, that shows up again. And so I'm going to make my text box smaller, and then I'm going to move on over here to the next one, and I'll come back to this in a second. So now I need to find two thin fonts. And so we're talking about the thickness of the font. And so some of these look super thin. Let me hop over here and remind myself which ones these were. Okay. And so I choose this, go back to character so I can see the preview. And I honestly don't remember what that first one was, but this is close enough. And then for my F, I'm going to choose another thin font, and I do remember what I used for it. It was a kind of scripty font. Let me see if I can find it. I'm not going to spend too much time. I can find a script font. Let's go with ways to say goodbye. I noticed that happened again. So I'm going to come over here and make my text box a little bigger so I can see the letter. Wow, this is a larger. So something else I can do is select that text box. Hopefully this works. Drop my cursor in and make it smaller. There we go. Yeah, I don't like that one. Let's see here. The one I had a while ago had some nice little serifs to it. It's a little bit different. This one's fine. It's unique enough. So and then we have thick, thin. Oh, I don't want you to use the same fonts you used on the thick, thick combination one. And so let's find a different thick font. I'm going to remind myself what I used over here. And on some fonts, you're going to find that they have a bold version, and then they might have bold oblique. If you remember what we talked about last week, oblique looks a little bit like an italic. And some of them have medium, which is also a more bold font. I'm trying to find some that have semi-bold. Is another option. Let's see here. Hobo's kind of a thick font. And so then our F should be a thin. And just like I was saying that some of these have bold versions, some of them have thin versions as well. And so if you look at this one here, it has light, so noteworthy light. Once again, increase the size of this. Okay. Okay, so at this point we've got them sized so that they're fairly large. One thing I want to have you guys do now is select all of them, and we're going to take these from being letters and turn them into shapes by right-clicking and going to create outlines. And so now if we click away and we click back on them, you're not going to be able to change the font. You're not going to be able to change the letter. There's no way of highlighting it now because it's just a shape or a symbol just like any other shape that we might create. So now the fun part comes in combining these together. And so I'm going to talk you through how I combined these together. As you're combining them, you need to have the two letters touch. And so I couldn't have it just off like this. I need to have it actually touch. And one thing to keep in mind when you're having it touch is at this point we want to be able to recognize the two letters, but you want to make sure that you have a clean weld or uniting it. And so we'd want to be careful about having just like weird little spaces like down here that just kind of seem to hang out. You wouldn't want to have, and if I can zoom in on it here, just this little thing right here. Make sure you're paying attention and that the shapes that you're creating are kind of clean, and whatever is in the positive space is what you want there, and whatever's in the negative space is what you want there, instead of like what I just showed you, just like a little teeny tiny bit hanging out that wasn't intentional. And so then what I had a while ago looked like this. There's a little bit of space. I'm going to move it a little bit more to the left by using my arrow keys. And so then there's that. And then with this one here, I just simply connected the end of one letter with the beginning of the next letter, which works. But you could have also connected this right here. You want to just be careful that you don't end up with extra negative space there that doesn't look right. And so tweak it, play around with it. We can still tell that we have an L and an F there, but we're starting to create our own unique shape. And then with this one here, the F had a serif, and if this happens, it just means you've clicked too many times. Come back up here and go to the left arrow to get back out. And so I do that when I'm nervous. So if you want to move your letters around and find like the curve of this letter seemed to match the curve of this letter for me on the serif. So I just kind of moved them together like that. And so here's something that is bothering me. Right here, this little space, I'm going to take and select that, open up my align palette, and try to align this to the right a little bit more. It's not though. Oop. Now, sometimes what we want and what we get isn't exactly the same. One way of fixing this would be to bring this down more, I guess. And so there, eliminated that extra space. So anyway, your goal on this part of the assignment is to create 6 different 2-letter combinations. And so up here at the top, I've defined for you that for this box you're going to create a thick combination, and this one here a thin combination, and this one here a thick-thin combination. Down here in these boxes, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to follow any presets from Mrs. Salmons and I, but if you want to look back at what we had on this assignment, these are some combinations that you might consider playing around with, and realize not every combination of fonts is going to look good together. I played around with probably like 10 different combinations before I finally settled on these. And so don't feel like the first thing that you play around with has to be what you come up with in the end. And so a few final things on this. What you want to do is make sure that you enlarge this to the size of your box, because these are going to be a part of what you mat later on. So don't have the edges of your shape touch the border of the box, because you're going to cut around these and we don't want to end up cutting off part of your shape. But I want you to center these in the box, and I'm not always a fan of centering things, but go ahead and center your shapes in the middle of the box. And so these look like they're fairly close. But once again, just make sure you don't have your shape touching the border, or else you're going to not have any white space in between, and that won't look so great. So, final thing to do is open up your Pathfinder palette. This is the one that you used when you created your Popsicle Valentine. And you're going to choose Unite and unite these. And you're going to choose this one and unite it, and this one and unite it. And so now we are ready for step 2. Make sure that you save this and leave it open for the next step.